And we are live. I'm here with my friend Daniel. How are you doing, Daniel?
I'm fine, thanks.
Nice
How are
to
you
see
doing?
you. Nice to see you. It's been, I guess, a couple of weeks since we chatted on a live stream.
Yes.
What's been happening in your faith journey since we last spoke? Anything exciting or any topics that you were that you wanted to talk about? Because I know every time I catch you in the live stream on the chat, you've got some interesting input. You've got some sometimes you've got some quotations from that author, and I did buy his book. I did buy one of his books, so I know you've got a
Oh,
lot.
good.
I know you've got a lot to contribute at all times. So you always come up with some question or some comment that's
Yeah.
pertinent to the guest, and so that's I appreciate that. I had a young kid on the other day for last night from Toronto. He's been on twice now. Bright young guy,
He is.
Brandon,
Yes.
and it's so touching to hear the young people. Now I'm starting to sound old, right? We talk about the young people, but it's encouraging. It is encouraging.
Yes. Young people, they get me, they get you excited. Like I met with I talked to a young gentleman the other day, and he, first time I met him, and he was just he was talking about the Lord and baptism and all kinds of things. It just kind of came out of him. And I thought, boy, the Spirit's moving here, you know. But I had a the first. I wanted to ask you a question because I really like that you're doing this. You're entering everyone into a mass. Is that what you do?
Yeah.
Like you,
Perpetual mass, perpetual mass. So the way it works is every religious order, it doesn't matter which one it is, they have monks and nuns, the brothers and the sisters who are in the habit. Well, their job basically is to pray for the world, to pray for sinners, to pray for those in the church, to pray for those outside of the church, and to pray for world peace, everything, to pray for the second coming, and pray for everything that the church wants them to pray for. And all of these orders, these holy orders, they actually, they need financial support. And one of the charitable works they do for those who donate is they add you or a loved one's name to their intentions for every day when they do the mass. Okay, so if you have a favorite religious order locally, or mine's in Chicago, it's the Scalabrians. Okay, so they take care of, their special charism is to take care of migrant peoples. So anyone that's on the move, that's been displaced, anyone that's homeless, anyone that's dealing with immigration, all these sorts of things. That's their sort of charism with this religious order. They go around and they help people, and of course, they have the prayer, the contemplative life also, but they also have an active life where they're actually helping people. And it's the missionary fathers of Saint Charles Borromeo, and Saint Charles Borromeo, obviously a great saint. And that's just the order that I became familiar with because I've bought many perpetual masses over the years, many, like hundreds, and they were just the easiest to work with. And I liked their order for many reasons, but one of the main reasons was the Italian parish here that I used to attend in the mornings for daily mass. I've gotten out of the habit and I want to get back in the habit of that. But they were actually a Scalabrinian. They had an association with the Scalabrinians, and they also had an association with Our Lady of Pompeii, which is not exactly an apparition in Italy, but it's a miraculous painting that was responsible for a lot of conversions, including the conversion of Blessed Bertolo Longo, who was a high priest of Satanism before he converted by this miraculous image of Our Lady giving the scapular and the rosary to Saint Dominic and Saint Catherine, or whoever it was. So this is why I got involved with the Scalabrinians, and I do the prayers every day because I belong to that confraternity, and different confraternities that I've joined over the years, and I've done I've enrolled people in perpetual masses. You yourself and your family are enrolled, and my family, people at my work, and my friends and stuff like that. It's a good way to have a daily intention. Not only is the mass being said, but I know the mass is being said, so it keeps me thinking about that, like the faucet's always open, sort of thing. Like if that grace is flowing. And in my own personal prayer life, it helps me to know that I belong to a confraternity, or that I have a mass that's being said for my wife and for myself and for my parents and my siblings and my friends and people I've met on the podcast. It just helps me to know that I'm not carrying the burden of this all by myself, but I've got many, many people around the world that are praying for me. For example, in the confraternity of the Rosary, we all pray with each other, for each other, and different confraternities that I belong to. So that's why I do it. And it's also, it might be influential if someone is, lapsing away from their Catholic faith. It might help, those graces might help to bring them back. Or if someone's an atheist, I mean, imagine that, they could come to Christ. It's like, I don't know the details. Like we'll discover that on Judgment Day, right? We don't need to know the details. All we need to know is it can't hurt to have a mass said for this poor sinner once or twice or three times. Imagine if a mass is being said every day for this sinner, this poor sinner, whether he's an atheist or whatever. Or we all need it. We need the graces. So that's why I do it, and it's the most exciting. It's the most exciting part of the podcast, other than sitting down and talking to people. Obviously, that's exciting too. So that's
I used to do a lot of the same thing when I was going to the Byzantine liturgy here in the Sioux. But I gave a stipend, so I was wondering if you would accept. I mean, obviously, do you have to give donations with this, or do you? Are you
I do. Yeah, I do every time. Yeah, I do it every time. Yeah. So I have a fixed amount that I give every time. So like if I like the guy that I just met, that I interviewed just now, he's from Ireland. His name's Sean Murray. So I just email. I just do it all electronically. I just make a donation and I say, enroll this person in a perpetual mass, and this person and his family. And hopefully I never forget. I always try to remember to put "and family," because they'll pray for the person and their family, which includes, living and deceased members of, the parents or the whatever children they have or spouses. So, there's a small donation I make, and they know me at this organization. Obviously, for years I've been doing this, and they're very friendly with me, and I appreciate the prayers, like the prayers that I get, and of course the masses. There's nothing more powerful than the mass, right? Now I have read that I can't remember which document it was, but I've recently read within the past year that when you are enrolled in a perpetual mass, it's sort of a lower grade of graces that are coming to you than if you were to do an individual mass every day. Like, I mean, at my parish where I attend, there's a husband who lost his wife, I believe, because it's the same man offering the same mass for the same woman every Sunday, and I'm sure she's benefiting from that, if God forbid if she's in purgatory. But that's much more powerful. That sort of weekly donation sort of arrangement would be a lot more powerful than the one-time enrollment that I'm doing. But it's still something, and it allows me to maybe not be as deep, but to be broader, because there are literally hundreds of people that I have enrolled. And so they're all on that prayer list. They're all on that list of intentions, and their special masses said throughout the year, in addition to the in addition to the daily masses. And so it can't hurt, but it's sort of a more shallow and broad approach, spreading the graces that way, as opposed to this gentleman at my parish who's doing a very targeted approach, which is more which is more powerful according to this Catholic document that I read. But we don't really think about these things in terms of power and like mechanically, like God's a vending machine and I want to maximize the
Hmm.
output. If I put in my money,
Yeah.
I want to get the most graces. We're not supposed to think of it that way. But it is, there is an economy of salvation, and so we just have to know in the back of our mind the relative weight of what we're doing. And of course, there's nothing better than the Mass. And so yeah, it's an exciting life hack. It's like a Catholic life hack. I actually have a Mass being said every day until the end of time for the holy souls in purgatory. So
Nice.
you can enroll the holy souls in purgatory in a perpetual Mass. So that's pretty cool. When I think about that, if I'm going through a week period where I'm not strong spiritually, I think,
Mhm.
well, I've got the holy souls in purgatory. I know they're grateful for that Mass that was said for them today and yesterday and the day before and tomorrow and so on. And their prayers are very, very powerful according to the teachings of the
Mhm.
church. So that kind of,
Yep.
if I'm feeling low or whatever, I can think about that, and it helps perk me up and to think the invisible legions of angels and the holy souls in purgatory, and I'm on the winning side. It helps to encourage me in the spiritual battle day to day.
Well, if you require any help or assistance with donations, do you have a place where
Yeah, yeah.
you can?
You support me on Patreon, right?
Yes.
I saw that, and I thank you very much for that. That's sweet of you. It's not necessary, and
Okay.
it's not at the forefront of my mind. It's like if I make if I'm doing a small sacrifice or whatever, it's like it's the least I can do, and but I do appreciate your sentiment there, and I do appreciate that you support me. And it's not about that. It really is not about that. It's
No.
about the exciting involvement on the winning side. Like we're in a spiritual battle, and you
Yeah.
and I are choosing to be on the side of God and Christ and His church, and that's to me that's the most exciting thing. Like there are Catholics who are chasing after uh, not a worldly success, but they want to use money and power in a way, and that's good. More power to them. But that's not the way I'm
No.
operating. That's not my focus. My focus
I
is to
understand.
remain small and humble,
Yeah.
and to try to like this is a perfect gig for me because I get to talk to people, meet to people, pray for people, and they're praying for me. I've met people who have been praying for me like with sincerity, and it's going to be very exciting on Judgment Day to see how their prayers for me just really helped my family or someone that was maybe going down a dark path to just see the light and to turn away. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know what goes on. Uh, like for example, with a loved one or a family member who they don't share every detail of their inner life. So it's only on Judgment Day we're going to get to see how the graces of prayer and it's all very mysterious, and it will remain mysterious until Judgment Day. But I'm looking forward to it. The most important thing for me is to be on the winning team, and the choice is clear. There's absolutely no doubt. Uh, and the only temptation, like why do we have temptation as Catholics? It's because we're weak. We like pleasure. We like convenience. And if there's a battle to be fought, it's like, well, can I fight it tomorrow? Because today I'm not feeling too great. I just want to lay around. I just want to lay around. I don't want to go out on the battlefield. I'd rather just lay around, eat chips or whatever. So, we're weak human beings in this fallen world.
Well, I was giving, I was doing masses when I went to the Byzantine liturgy. I was really doing a lot of masses there, and I was also lighting votive candles.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
nice.
I can I can tell you that it is very, very powerful,
Yeah,
and I know it's powerful because I've seen the fruits of it. But I did want to ask you that I do have a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, whose daughter is a drug addict, and I'm wondering how we could
Just
get.
give me her name and just give me her name and I'll enroll her.
Okay, do you want me to just
Just give me her name, first and last name. That's it. Just email me.
right now?
No, no, email me.
I'll email you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
email you her name.
yeah. That's it. That's it. Done.
Okay, good.
That's it. Done. And if you want, I'll email you the details of this order that I communicate with because they're very easy to deal with. And if you have someone, for example, that's sick or that's passed away, and you want to do perpetual mass, enroll them in perpetual mass. Um, it's I think it's a nice thing to do, and it's a gesture, and like I said, we'll see on Judgment Day just how God used those graces. He's going to decide. And I belong to the confraternity. It's the consecration to Jesus through Mary, Louis de Montfort, Saint Louis de Montfort.
Yeah,
He does a
yeah.
consecration, and so I did that. So I have prayers for that, and I belong to that. And we're told in that confraternity to submit everything to Mary, and Mary is submitted to Jesus. So we let go really of a lot of our intentions, and we let Mary decide how to distribute graces. So instead of that's why I don't really have like a laser focus in my prayer life, like about tackling this problem or this person or whatever. Like I'll sign people up for perpetual masses. Like a friend of mine at work got sick, I signed him up for a perpetual mass. So but I don't worry too much about distributing the graces with my own intentions. I give that to our Blessed Mother, and that's the charism of this consecration, the Montfortian consecration. And it's perfect for me because I don't like having to worry too much about the details of the battle. I leave that to her and her son. So
Well, I can tell you this. I feel that energy. Um, uh, I can't explain it, but I feel it because I know it's powerful, and the mass is so powerful, and having masses said for souls is just so powerful that it kind of energizes me. So that's God bless you for doing that. It's really a good thing.
yeah, you know how I discovered this Catholic life hack? I was meeting with a bunch of young men at this Catholic youth group, even though I was not a youth at the time, I was 40 years old or whatever. And, there was an elderly gentleman there. I can't remember how old he must have been, maybe approaching 80, okay?
Mhm.
Might have been around 80 years old. And he would share with us some of his devotions and his spiritual life and the sorts of things. And he told a story one time about all of the masses that he had said for his deceased wife or his or maybe a close relative. I can't remember at the time what it was, but and then he got in the habit then of enrolling living people. I think it might have been his brother. Forgive me if I
Okay.
get the details wrong, but the basic idea is that he discovered that we can enroll the living, not just the dead, in these perpetual masses. And
Yes.
it was like suddenly he got excited about how that might be beneficial for conversion, because that's the thing I'm most excited about. The two things I'm most excited about, one is conversion of sinners, the other one is the release of the holy souls in purgatory. Those are the two things I'm most excited about.
Very good.
And so he sort of got me excited about this life hack, and I've been doing it ever since. So it's pretty cool. I give the credit to him.
Great. One of the other questions I wanted to ask is you. It seems to me that you studied philosophy and metaphysics
As a hobby.
quite extensively. Is that true?
Just as a hobby, I wouldn't say that it's a deep study. It was more of a survey, and I've done quite a bit of reading. Over the years, I studied philosophy as a hobby for about a dozen years or so. Um, and the thing about my approach to intellectual endeavors is that if I'm not interested, then I can't learn anything. I can't learn anything if I'm not interested. Like, my wife's amazed because she'll ask me, oh, so and so, and when we did this and we did that, I have no memory of it. No memory. But but I do have memories of things that are important to me. So the stuff, some of the stuff that she finds important, I don't find important. I just forget it. But some stuff she doesn't find important, but I did find important, I remember. So this is, I think we're all like that to a certain extent. But when it comes to reading, when it comes to learning, if I'm not interested, it just ain't going to stick. But when it came to certain types of philosophy and metaphysics, for sure, I was very interested. And the same thing with studying certain aspects of church history or philosophy or theology and these sorts of things. So that's how it works. I'm not like a learned person, but if I'm interested in something, for sure, I'll dig into it and I'll think about it. I won't just read passively. I'll think. And, there have been some very great minds. If you read, some of the most famous authors in secular philosophy, you can be very impressed. But I only give them so much respect if they're not Christian, and I am willing to challenge their ideas, and I'm willing to question their particular approach. Especially if you read 10 different philosophers in the Western tradition, you'll get 10 very different emphases, if not 10 different very perspectives and conclusions. So at the end of the day, you're going to have to commit to something, and if it's not this one particular guy and what he thought 1,000 years ago, then it's unlikely that that's going to fit perfectly with your temperament and with how you see things. So you're going to have to end up sort of cobbling together your own understanding. And that's what I did as an atheist, and it led me down some pretty dark paths. As you know, I ended up in atheistic Satanism and hard solipsism and some crazy worldviews. But by the grace of God, I was able to come out the other side, and now I've got the Catholic Church, and I've got the saints, and I've got the theology and the dogmas and everything like that, and it all hangs together with the best parts of what I loved about Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, and so now I can gather all that richness and make sense of it. Whereas when I was an atheist, I was just sort of dabbling around and not quite sure what's true, what's not true, and no real solid foundation. That's why when Christ talks about building on a solid foundation, I know exactly what he's talking about. And with a lot of people, if they don't have Christ, their edifice might be beautiful, but I can see that the foundation's not there, and I'm not impressed because it's going to blow over with the first gust of wind and the first gust of change. Because when you're in love with the ways of the world's constantly changing, and it's a dangerous game to invest in a house of cards, right, in a windy world. So
yeah, well, you had given me a comment on, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, solipsism.
Yeah.
Solipsism,
Yeah. Solipsism, yeah.
And can you refresh my memory on what that is?
Yeah, it's basically sole ipse, only I am.
Okay.
Only I am. So I characterize solipsism into two camps, two broad categories. There's hard solipsism, which I subscribe to, which says there are no other minds, there are no other humans or any other beings whatsoever, and there's no physical reality, there's no material universe. I'm a disembodied mind. All I am is mind, and all of this, if I feel like I'm hurting my hand or tickling my foot or whatever, it's just a sensation in my mind. There's no hand, there's no reality to any of that beyond the subjective experience. That's hard solipsism. And so basically you are God, like at that point. So that's where I was when I converted to the real God. I was the fake God. So that's hard solipsism. Soft solipsism is where you actually do believe there are other minds and other, there's a material universe, but you also know that you're not justified philosophically in that belief. It's just a belief. It's just a leap of faith, and it's unfounded. There's no way to prove it, and this is the without God. I'm talking about for the secular humanist and these sorts of things. Because when you have God, then you have the proof. You have, because your reality is grounded in the source of all being, which is God, and so then you have, as Rene Descartes said, you have that ground for belief in the other, in the material world, and so on and so forth. So that's the beginning of modern secular science, is Rene Descartes, where he reduced everything with radical doubt, questioning everything, including the sense perceptions, the alleged sense perceptions. His project was to rid the world of all faith-based beliefs and to get back to the nuts and bolts. The mistake that he made was that he got rid of 2 out of the 4 categories of causality that Aristotle had discovered, okay, and which Thomas Aquinas had sort of rehabilitated for the Catholic Church. So, Descartes, I thank him on the one hand because he brought me out of hard solipsism, but on the other hand, he was very, very wrong to impoverish science, and that's why we have the problems that we have today with identity politics and with LGBTQ and with scientism in the pejorative sense of the word, where we think that the natural sciences are some sort of apex at the height of the hierarchy of knowledge and whatnot, when they're not. They're very low on the totem pole. So this I blame on Descartes, among other people, but primarily Descartes, because he impoverished it while he was trying to build a solid foundation for the natural sciences, and in a certain sense he did. He left out some very, very important components, such as final causality. What is the purpose of a nature? So today we ask, what is a woman? Well, to ask what is a woman, we need to know what is a human. So what is a human nature? And the final causality that Aristotle as a pagan understood, and which Descartes as a so-called Catholic rejected, the final causality is talking about the purpose, the meaning. Why was this creature created by God? That's the final causality. It's very, very important. It's central. It's the first thing. The final causality is the first thing. And he threw that out for the advancement of the natural sciences. And that's what we're suffering from today, because we can't define what a woman is. We can't define what a human is. And we've got bestiality and homosexuality and all sorts of things because of that. We don't know what marriage is. We don't know what intimacy is. We don't know anything about anything, because we rejected, largely in part to Descartes, the final causality.
Well, I've been, when you're talking about things like intimacy,
Yep.
etc., I have been listening to Rabbi Friedman in Judaism. I find Judaism, when it comes to questions like this, it seems like Judaism simplifies it for me.
Okay.
Okay, like like Rabbi Friedman will explain when someone's married, for an example, it's not a man and a woman, it's a husband and a wife. Okay, and the things like being loved and being needed, like, he would say things like, I would rather be needed than loved. Okay, and I don't agree with everything with Judaism, obviously, but for some reason, and because our faith comes from Judaism, okay, for some reason, I feel that these rabbis have a grasp on some of these concepts in the practical world.
Sure.
If that makes sense to you. Like,
Yeah.
So I listen to these guys because if I go to guys like Aristotle and Aquinas or some of these Catholics, or like Aristotle, those types, I get confused.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I don't know.
The language. Yeah. The language. Yeah.
The language.
Yeah.
Yeah. The language. It's like.
But John Paul II, I think, did a good job talking about marriage and family and intimacy and all that.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's an option. I'm not saying not to listen to the Jews. Like, I mean, they do have a gift from God for sure, when it comes to communication, and when it comes to
Right.
practical stuff. When it comes to practical stuff, just be aware that it's that they've rejected our Messiah. They've rejected their own
Well, I know.
Messiah. Just be aware of that. But yeah, I
I'm
mean, when it comes to, if you want some good financial advice, go to, go to the Jews. That's a joke. It's just a joke. It's just,
oh,
a,
I
but it's
know.
true. It's probably true too.
Well, it's true. It's like it's like when it's like concupiscence and the evil inclination, um, and especially during Lent, we think personally, I think more about concupiscence
Yeah.
or the evil inclination, and I'm, like you said, interested. I'm fascinated in how I I, I can reason myself out of concupiscence, if
Mm,
that makes sense to you. Like I can, the evil inclination comes, and I can reject it.
nice.
Um, but what I'm saying is that the rabbi kind of helped me with that.
Nice.
Okay, and I thought, well, like I said, I'm not, I don't buy into Judaism, but when it comes to these things, like you have this evil inclination, and how do you reason beyond, you know, to 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 get out of that, and to stay on the right track.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have any ways that you deal with those things?
Well, I mean, it's just, it's always, for me, it's always the same sort of question of my will versus God's will. And like, I know I want what's easy, what's pleasurable, and it's just so predictable. So there were, in the Eastern Church back in the day, when they were doing, the Desert Fathers going to the desert, and the whole beginning of monasticism, they would say pleasure is pain and pain is pleasure. And what did they mean by that? What they meant was that if, let's say, you're attracted to this fruit on the tree and it looks good to eat, and you reach out and you taste it, that pleasure is pain for the spiritual man, because he does not want to gratify his animal instincts. That's painful for him. What does he want to do? He wants to not eat it. He wants to fast. He wants to suffer. Now, this could be taken to an extreme where it's not good and it's not healthy. It's not for everyone. The church has done a good job of saying, look, we can have that, and we can also have different emphases within different charisms and different religious orders and whatever. And we try to have the church tries to teach us to be moderate and not to like whip ourselves till the point where we're bleeding and these sorts of excessive mortifications. The church is very caring in that way, but there are good and holy men and women over the years who have loved Christ so much that they wanted only suffering and death, only suffering and death. And to me, that's the highest. That's the dream. That's the highest goal. And I aspire. I don't I don't aspire to it, but I admire it. And it's funny because I'm the opposite of that. It's like I want pleasure, I want convenience, and these sorts of things. So when it comes to my temptations in this world generally, in my life, and in during Lent, it's like I just have to ask myself. I just need to be honest with myself. Like, okay, David, you can do it. You can do whatever you want. You can do what you want. You're free. Do you want to do that? What is the price you're paying? Are you, is it helping you? Is it helping anybody? Or is it just a short-term gain? And is Satan happy that I that I just allowed myself to have a little treat, or to cheat, or to whatever it is, like whatever the little pleasure is, or whatever it is? Am I pleasing God, or am I pleasing Satan, or am I pleasing my flesh, or am I pleasing the world? And so it's just a question of being honest. And I wish and I hope and I pray that God will allow me to have a taste, a flavor for only what pleases God. And what doesn't please God, I want to have a distaste. I don't want to be don't even want to be attracted to it. Now, I also understand that God's going to say, well, that's no fun. That's too easy. That's too easy. I can't just give you, like, make it that easy. Like, go left will please me, go right will displease me, and like make it distasteful to go to the left and make it very tasteful and attractive to go to the right. That's too easy. You have to be tried. You have to be tested. You have to prove that you love me. And so to prove that you love me, it's going to be inconvenient. It's going to be painful. You're going to be confused sometimes, and you'll lie to yourself. You'll deceive yourself. You rationalize your own selfishness. And that's the game. That's where it's at in this fallen world. We're going to have to go through that. So all of that to say that, it's a question of being humble. It's a question of being honest with yourself and making a choice. And so one of the tricks that I shared with you last time, I think, is to think about everything in terms of Judgment Day. So right now, here I am talking with you. Okay? I could say all kinds of stuff to you about whatever, politics or you or me or whatever. I could say all kinds of stuff to you. I have to think about it. Okay, on Judgment Day, will I be happy with the choices I made in my conversation with Daniel? Okay, so here I am right now thinking about Judgment Day, and that's going to help me to be respectful and to keep on topic and not to make bad jokes or whatever. And so that meditation of thinking about it on Judgment Day, how am I going to like these choices that I made? And so it's the same thing if it's Lent and I've given up sugar and meat and video games, and it's Lent and I'm tempted to break some of the rules or bend the rules or whatever like that. So I'd like to think about that I'm watching myself. It's Judgment Day, and I'm watching myself with these choices that I make. And that gives me the strength and the courage to say, hey, I'm going to make the choice that I wouldn't normally make because I'm a weak, selfish sinner. I'm not going to make the weak, selfish choice right now because on Judgment Day, I want to see myself do the right thing. And so this is an opportunity for me. So that's how I try to think about it. Now, am I successful? Not really, but it's the goal. It's the plan. It's a work in progress.
Well, I like your analogy of pleasure brings pain.
Yeah.
I think it's different for everyone. Like, I mean, how I deal with it is different than how
Yeah.
you deal with it,
Yeah.
or anyone. But let me ask you this: when you are successful in a temptation, okay,
Yeah.
if you have the concupiscence or the evil inclination and you beat it, okay, do you feel it the next day, or do you feel it later on? Do you feel the grace that came from overcoming that evil inclination?
Not usually. No, usually it's more of a let's think about it like there's a dark forest with monsters in it. And then there's the open, nice place which is civilized and humans and it's good. And you got your church and you got a family, all the good stuff's there. Okay. And so in my spiritual life, I can wander around. Okay, in my spiritual life, I'm wandering around. So I go and I'm like, oh, this is interesting, the dark forest and whatever. And I can go in without getting bit by the beasts and without getting shedding my blood to Satan and his minions and these monsters in the woods. I can go in and play around and come back out, but it's a dangerous game. I can also find myself deep in there, wounded with sin and whatever, and I can say, I'm out of here. I'm gonna like get out, but it takes time. It's not a matter of minutes or hours or days. It's a matter of like weeks and months to like get out. And then you feel that in a spiritual battle, okay, I was in trouble. I put myself in trouble and I clawed my way out by the grace of God. Now I'm in the sunshine and I'm in a civilized world and I'm back to being a human. So that's how I see it. So if I'm falling prey to temptation, that means I'm already in the shadowy part, either near the forest or in this analogy, okay, in the spiritual realm. It's like I'm in the dark jungle, or I'm at the edges of it at least. And so it's more of a long-term thing. Like for example, I always talk about COVID was a dark period for me, and I allowed myself to go into the danger zone and like give into temptation and stuff like that. Got wounded, and I'm still like suffering from that. But I've managed to get far enough out now that I'm sort of back into the daylight, and the I don't think I'm completely out of the woods. Like I'm not enjoying the consolations that I did for the first 12 years of my conversion. For 12 years, I was like riding high, and now I'm kind of like wounded because I didn't have access to prayer and the sacrament. I was depriving myself of prayer life because I was being deprived by the government of the sacraments. So it was just like it was just I wouldn't say bad luck because I don't believe in luck, but that's just the way things played out with COVID and all that sort of thing, where I was weak and I didn't have access to the sacraments. My prayer life suffered, and it was just bad. So so it takes time, and so it's not one particular temptation or one particular day that you have a victory, but it's more on a broader time scale. That's what I would say. And I hope you understand like sort of the
Mhm.
atmosphere. Like where are you? Are you in the sunshine, or are you in some shadowy place spiritually? And it's part of the inner life, and you don't share this with people. I might tell my wife a little bit of what's going on, like how I'm feeling, but I don't go into great detail about it.
Mhm.
And the person I would talk to most intimately about this would be my priest in the confession booth. So
Right.
so I hope that conveys to you how I see it. I see it very much as a territorial thing. Like, which kind of territory are you in these days? And it doesn't change quickly. Like, you have to travel, you have to get out of the woods and enjoy the sunshine, and then you can heal, but you're still wounded from the monsters in the woods. You know what I mean? So that's how I see it. And I've never been like diagnosed as being like addicted to anything like alcohol or drugs or anything like that, but I think it's the same sort of thing. I think that it's like we're addicted to pleasure, and so if you're addicted to alcohol or whatever, and you conquer it, it's just like a slow, gradual change of atmosphere where you start to live in the sunshine as opposed to being in this dark place. That's, I think, would be a good analogy. Although I haven't dealt with like any explicit addictions per se.
Did this bad trip that you had with Satanism was it the sacramental life that brought you out of it? Do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Because, well, I mean, it was a multi-step process, but I can say with certainty that, it was through my studying and through my pursuit of the truth. If you seek the truth, you find the truth. And so studying philosophy and being discontent with my lifestyle and with my philosophy, I found God, and I became a monotheist. And then it was the holy sacrifice of the Mass that made me decide I don't want to be a Muslim. I want to be a Christian, because I hated Christianity before, but I resisted becoming a Christian. But when I met a monk at my work, and he took me to his monastery, and he showed me the Mass, and I said, I'm in. I'm committing myself to Christianity, even though I don't believe in the Trinity. I don't believe in the Incarnation yet. But I told him that, and he said, no problem. We're going to educate you, and if you accept the teachings, you'll be Christian. But it was the
Yeah.
Mass. It was the Mass, the power of the Mass. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. I want in. I want to worship God. I see that you're worshiping my God, and this is where it's at. This is where it's at. Even though I didn't believe in the teachings of Christianity. So it's very mysterious. It's very powerful, and I'll never forget that first Mass that I witnessed. Even though as a child I did go to a couple masses with my Protestant parents, just because some distant relatives happened to be Catholic.
Yeah, my dad always told me that it was the sacrament that kept kept him in the Catholic Church, so to speak. And I don't really buy into no salvation outside the Catholic Church. I don't think most people even understand what that means.
Yeah.
Like for Protestants, are Protestant, but for everyone is that I guess what I would say to a Protestant is that, of course you're saved by Jesus Christ, but what we have in the Catholic Church is the sacrament, the body and blood. But I'm not saying that. Like I hear people like I think what turns people off is this no salvation outside the Catholic Church scares people. To say, well, why would I want to listen to something like that? That where if I'm not in the Catholic Church, I'm damned. If you know what I mean. So, and I've listened to priests who talk about this no salvation outside the Catholic Church, and I honestly don't think they know what they're talking about when they're discussing it. What do you think about this no salvation?
I think it's a very nuanced question when it comes to pastoral care. You don't want to just go around telling people that you're damned if you're not in the church, but you can start by talking with someone that's not a non-Catholic of whatever worldview. You can start by just saying, well, let's talk with people who believe in God. First of all, it's just going to make my story easier. So we're talking to a non-Catholic Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or whatever. We can at least agree that once we are in heaven with God, we're not going to disagree about religious matters of doctrine or whatever. We're not going to disagree. It's not like there are going to be two camps in heaven, like I believe in the Trinity and I don't.
Yeah.
Either God's a Trinity or he's not. There's not going to be a disagreement in heaven. Sorry, there's not. There's going to be unity in heaven. God is the principle of unity, and there's going to be unity. So we don't need to get angry when each and every worldview says, I am the one true worldview, because you wouldn't believe it if you thought it was false. No one wants to believe a lie, as St. Augustine said. No one wants to believe a lie. So everyone's going to say, my worldview is the one true worldview, because truth cannot contradict truth. You believe something different from me, I'm right, therefore you're wrong. No hard feelings. Everyone says that. We're all in the same boat. Everyone. So everyone, like the Jews say, you have to be a Jew to go to heaven, and I applaud them for that, because if Judaism is true, then that's a necessary consequence of that fact, right? I don't think it is true. I think that Judaism was a precursor to Catholicism, and they talked about the coming Messiah, and the Jews of today missed the boat. They missed their own Messiah. They couldn't identify their own Messiah. It's very tragic, it's very sad, but St. Paul talks about it very openly and clearly. St. Paul talks about it. It's like, there's been a partial hardening that's come upon the Jews until the end times, but at the end, they'll come back in. Mm-hmm. So there's good news. There's always good news with God. And the good news relies very centrally on unity. We are all going to be on the same page, agreeing about everything that matters in terms of religion. We're all going to understand that most of us were wrong about most doctrines. Okay, no big deal. But we have to be humble enough to follow the truth wherever it leads. And like I always joke, I make a joke, if Scientology is the one true religion, we're all going to be Scientologists in heaven. But we know Scientology is a false religion. Pretty much everyone can agree about that, except for the Scientologists, right? So, we don't need to get uptight and think, oh, it's too rude and triumphalism to say that we're the one true Church of Christ. That's not nice. Well, yeah, it's got nothing to do with being nice. It's got nothing to do with being nice. I'm not worried about the devout Muslim or Jew or the Protestant. I'm not worried about them. They love God. In my humble opinion, if you love God, you're in. But that final step of acknowledging all of the Catholic doctrines, that's part of the process of either living and converting or the process of dying, right? Because don't forget, there's purgatory, right? So the painful part of purgatory for the devout Muslim might be like, oops, I was wrong about Jesus. Oops, I was wrong about Muhammad. Oops, I was wrong about all kinds of stuff. And you just God just burns off all that nonsense. And then that good, God fearing Muslim ends up in heaven as a Catholic. That's what it's all about. That's where the unity is. And that's why I say there's no salvation outside of the church. Not because a good Muslim or Jew that loves God won't end up in heaven. But what happens between now and then is called conversion. You fall away from error and you get the fullness of truth, period. So it's a very nice thing. The doctrine that there's no salvation outside of the church is a very, very nice thing. It's nice, but we have to be careful how we present it. Obviously, we have to be very careful about that. I would never condemn anyone. Like, oh, you're going to hell because you're not Catholic. That's absurd. It's completely
Yeah.
absurd. So I hope you understand the nuance there in my position.
Yeah. Do you think that, or okay, when this what I'm having a problem, even as a Catholic, okay, a cradle Catholic, all right, because now that I've read some philosophy, and I'll tell you what I mean. Okay, all right, you've got heaven,
Yep.
you've got hell, and you've got purgatory. Okay, now doesn't this sort of mirror our criminal justice system in our world? In other words, okay, you got the good guys, okay, and then you got the bad guys, and then you got the guys in between, okay, and like so you got like the guys in prison, okay, and he's the real bad guy and he's in hell, and then you got the guy who's maybe he's a thief or something and he's in purgatory. So in other words, the point I'm making is that is are as Catholics are we taking this heaven purgatory hell thing literally?
Well, yeah.
In other words, how would Jesus Christ, how could he create something like hell?
Well, it's just it's like illness. What is illness but the lack of health? Like Aristotle and Aquinas do a good job of talking about these sorts of dilemmas. Like it's like heat. There's heat and cold. Cold is an absence of heat, right? It's like Saint Augustine does an excellent job talking about this. Like that evil has no substance of itself, right? So evil is not a substance. It's a privation of the good, and evil is not so much a thing or a noun, but a doing. It's like an adverb. It's like a way. Evil is not a thing, but a way of being, an orientation. So when it comes to heaven, hell, and purgatory, just think about it in very, very, very simple terms. Think about it like there's God. He's real. He's the source of everything that's good, life, health, beauty, whatever. He's the source of all that. And if you're properly oriented toward him and you love him, you get to participate in his life in the Holy Trinity for all eternity. There's just a marriage there that takes place. And if you hate him for whatever absurd reason, you love yourself unto contempt of God, as St. Augustine says, then you are putting yourself in an orientation whereby you're not going to be benefiting from the fire of God's burning love. You're going to be suffering because of that same fire of God's burning love. It's just a choice you made. It's a bad choice. That's why Moses said, choose wisely, choose life. He said, if you want to serve the other demon gods, go for it. But I'm telling you, I'm putting the blessing and the curse before you. I'm telling you, from God Almighty, there's a blessing and a curse. You choose. But choose wisely, choose life. He told them to choose. He told them that they have a choice, and he told them to choose wisely and to choose life. And so that's what we have to do as Christians. It's the same thing. It's like, yeah, you can say no to God's graces. You can say, screw you, God, I'm going to have all the pleasure I can get and rape and torture babies here for fun and just because that's what I want to do. And the people that do that, I was just watching a documentary earlier today about, or it wasn't a documentary, it was an interview of a guy who deals with pedophiles and murderers in prison. He's a psychologist that deals with these people. And I'm sorry to be the one to have to tell you, but there are people that do say no to God's graces, and they say yes to the most demonic and sick and depraved sin. That's a reality. It's a tragic reality. God doesn't want them to go to hell. He wants them to repent and to turn and to be with him. But he did give them free will, and he's not going to force them to love him. He will not force anyone to love him. And we can try to help, and we should pray for these people. We should, any chance we get, to educate people or to be loving and supportive, but in a way that's godly, not a way that's compromising with Satan and with the world. So yeah, I mean, people do choose to say no to God's grace, and they do end up falling away for all eternity, away from everything that's good, because God is the source of everything that's good. So if they wanted sexual pleasure, they're not going to get it in hell. If they wanted the pleasure of food, they're not going to get that in hell. Just look at the paintings of the medieval great Catholic painters of hell, purgatory, and heaven. That'll give you a pretty good picture of the justice and mercy of God, and how saying no to the one and only source of everything that you want is completely absurd, and it leads to nothing but misery. And yet we do it. We all do it in small ways, some of us in big ways, and it's tragic. And Saint Alphonsus Liguori said the thing we should fear most about God is his patience. That's what we should fear most, because God is watching. He's watching me when I sin. He's watching you when you sin. He's watching the perverted sex offenders when they sin. And he is silent. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. My ways are not your ways, says the Lord. And on Judgment Day, buckle up. Buckle up, because it's God will not be mocked, right? So we cannot smile on sin, either our own sin or our neighbor's sin. We can't smile on it. We need to fight the good fight, as St. Paul says. Otherwise, it's a world of hurt. But this is the beauty of being a Catholic. We know who and what God is. We know that we know to choose wisely. We know to choose life, and we know to fight against our base inclinations. And yeah, we're going to fall, we're going to fail, and it's not a big. It's a big deal, but it's not a big deal, kind of thing. Like, it's like a loving parent with a child. Of course, the child's going to make a mess, and it's part of the journey. But it would be prideful to think that you are already self-righteous, because no one's righteous apart from Christ. So, yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you that it's disturbing, deeply, deeply disturbing, if you actually seriously think about the four last things: death, judgment, heaven, and hell. It can be very, very disturbing. It can be very, very heavy. But every saint that I've read about that has this conversation with Christ and that gets an answer, the answer is always, don't worry about it. You should just behave as though you are saved, and that you are going to heaven, and that you are committed to doing God's will, and everything will flow from that. You don't have to worry about money. You don't have to worry about your relationships. You don't have to worry about anything if you just believe that you are going to heaven, because you are going to do the will of God, even when it's inconvenient, right? So that's really the secret. That's the secret to everything. We don't need to lay awake at night worrying about the optics of it, and is it really just? Is God just to have heaven and purgatory and hell? Is that a just system? You won't be worried about that. You'll just be like, okay, I love you, God. I'm going to do your will no matter what. And so that's why they call it heroic virtue. That's one of the things they look for when they're canonizing a saint, right? Heroic virtue, because it's not in our fallen nature to do that. And it's going to be astonishing to witness that. If you meet a living saint, you might be annoyed by him or her, but you'll definitely be astonished, because it's not wishy-washy, and there's no mediocrity there. It's fully alive. It's a dangerous thing. I think the Jews talk about this, how God is not an uncle, he's a hurricane or something like that.
But would you agree with this? And I can only speak from my experience. Okay. I have my children I think they fell away from the faith out of fear. And what I'm saying is that as a cradle Catholic growing up, fear was heavy. Okay, fear played a big part in our faith. You don't do this, you could go to hell, et cetera, et cetera. I'm finding now that young people aren't buying that line anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
No, like, how can I believe in a church, okay, that's going, okay. And I had my own daughter say this to me. Okay. She said, Dad, when we were growing up, you instilled fear in us. And that's what I learned. And I thought to myself, I had to eat some humble pie there. Okay. And say, yes, I did play this fear game, and I regretted it. So I'm to bring them back now. Okay. I'm on a different track.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm, because I'm thinking that didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
for sure.
But I'm not like, it's so difficult to discuss these things. But yeah. I find that, have you heard Gogol's line? It's hard to find any good in goodness.
No.
In other words, you'll have a person like myself. I'll talk about myself. Hey, you got to do this and you got to do that and you got to do this and I'm doing this. And you know what? If you don't do it, you're going to hell. Now, how is that good? To tell someone that. No. I'm saying you got to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Have you ever heard St. Francis de Sales when he said that honey attracts more flies than vinegar? That's what he was driving at. That's exactly what he was driving at. And that's why I don't understand why people are angry with Pope Francis, because Pope Francis has a very gentle touch. Very gentle touch. A very gentle touch. And I think that's the Christian way. That's the Christian way. That's what I think.
Me too.
That's what I think. The rad trads and the conservative Catholics, they don't like it. Why not?
No.
Why don't they like it? I like it. It's a soft touch. Too. It's a soft touch. He loves God and he's gentle. Now, what would be very interesting is to read the heart and mind of Pope Francis to know if he's severe and strict, because he recently said that he's conservative, right? So is he severe and strict with himself, which is what all of the great saints have said, to be severe and strict with yourself privately, and then gentle and loving and merciful with others, and preach the gospel at all times, but not with words, with actions, as St. Francis said. And there's so many citations that we can pull up where we are really taking care not to use harsh language. All of the saints talk about this. Never to use harsh language with the people. If you disagree and you have to correct someone, do it with the fear of God in your heart, that your soul is on the line on how you treat God's creature. You are in danger, not the person you're talking to. That's how you have to approach it. That's how the saints approached it.
Right.
So there's so many teachings, and I find Pope Francis very saintly. I mean, people are going to laugh at me for saying that, but I find him saintly. Like, I think he's a saintly old man and has a lot of wisdom, and I think he's Christian. And it's like, what else do you want? What do you want from this man? What do you want? Do you want strict rules? Do you want him to condemn people? What do you want? What's going to make you happy? Nothing is going to make these people happy. Nothing.
Well, I see. I don't know if you see how I see the church. I see the church differently now than I used to. Okay. is I see the Catholic Church as, have you heard physician heal thyself?
Yep.
The church heals you. And I think you can convert people to the Catholic faith when they understand what the church is. It's just like that guy up in Timmins who you know what I'm saying? He
Yeah.
he was a Catholic.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think he understood what the Catholic Church was.
No. No.
He missed the boat because I think of the dogma, the rules, all of that, and he didn't see it as a healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Possibly. I'm just
Oh, that's so common. That's so common, I would imagine. And we're just speculating. We're speculating, but we know that he may even have been abused. We know it's a possibility. He may have been abused. And there are different forms of abuse. It's not just sexual abuse. There's also, like I said, the saints want us to be very delicate with our fellow man, because we are delicate creatures. We're very delicate, and we can be damaged, and then it's not good for anyone. It's not good for the family. It's not good for society when this person gets damaged. It's a child of God.
Yeah.
Christ died for this person, and you damaged them. And then you make fun of how their life is screwed up, but you damaged them. So this is why the saints always emphasize we have to be very, very, very careful. Be very careful.
Yeah.
Be loving.
Yeah.
I mean, if you, like St. Paul says, if you do all the things and move mountains and miracles and healings and this sorts of things, and you do all these things in the name of Christ, but you didn't have love when you did it, you're clanging gong. It's worse than useless. It's worse than useless. It's a damnable sin. If you didn't do it with love, it's a damnable sin.
I think that's what attracted me to your podcast more than others was you have a wide variety of people. They're not necessarily Catholics. Some are atheists, Protestants,
Yeah.
possibly Muslims, maybe
Had a
Jews.
couple, yeah. A couple Jews, a couple Muslims, a couple of Hindus.
Yeah. Now, to me, that is where it's at. Okay. That's the unity part of it. And it, that's what drew me to this podcast more than others.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I have a lot of questions for you. It's like it's 9:15, so I imagine you have to maybe got to go to bed soon. But I do have
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
This what do they call it? New earther. My wife is an old earther. Okay, you're a new earther, but I was talking to her today about that because she's kind of into this too, and I said, "So are you an?" I said, David is a new earther. Are you a new earther?
Yeah.
She says, "No, I'm an old earther." I says, "What does that mean?" And she said, well, she was talking about geology and stuff. And I said, well, and she was making some good arguments, but I thought, I'm lost. So anyway, I wanted to know why you're a new earther. What does that mean?
Well, I would call it a young earther. Like it's like a
Sorry, young earther.
Yeah. It's the tradition of the church, basically. Like, I mean, the problem with an old earth is the main problem is, all the suffering and death that is inserted before our first parents, before the fall. Okay, so how I mean the Bible's pretty clear that there's no suffering and death and disease before the fall, and it's a consequence of sin. So I believe in a perfect God that created a perfect universe. Okay, and Satan fell away through pride. A third of the angels fell away with him. Adam and Eve fell. This is like Chesterton said, you just need to look out the window or open the daily newspaper to know that the fall, the dogma of the fall is infallibly true. That's a no-brainer. Does anyone think we live in paradise? Nope. So the communists might talk about building paradise, but that's a different story. So you can't escape this problem. If you're an old earther, you're stuck with this problem. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, because we have the tradition of the traditional teaching of the church, which, you know, puts it at under 10,000 years, the whole history of the whole universe, you know. So that's just a fact. That's the tradition of the church, and that's what the Bible says. And there's no precise number, although the church used to give a more precise number in the certain seasons of the liturgy. I think it was at Christmas time. The church would recite. I don't know what exactly it was, but I've encountered this document, and I could probably pull it up for next time we speak. But basically, the idea is they had an opinion about the exact date of how old the universe was. It's the long-standing tradition.
Genealogy? Is it like,
yeah, well, tradition. It's tradition using genealogies and using different things like that. That's just the tradition. And when I think of tradition, I don't think about man-made tradition. I think about a God-given, divine, infallible insight that's given to the people of God to carry with them. And it was the Jews that were given this, and the Jews talked about the Messiah, and the Messiah came, and the church was built by Christ, the God-man Jesus Christ, and some Jews accepted, some Jews rejected it, and some non-Jews accepted Christ as the Jewish Messiah, and they became Christian. Okay, so that's the history, salvation history in a nutshell. But the tradition is not just like, hey, some old book I found. No, tradition is God communicating, inspiring, endowing His chosen people with knowledge, the truth. Like, it's God is truth, and God is the source of truth. And sacred tradition is sacred because it's not ordinary, just like this fancy tale that we believe because it was written in some old book or something. No, it's God-given. It's God-given knowledge. And some of it was written down, and that's called the Holy Scriptures. So there are two parts to our sacred deposit of faith: the sacred scriptures and sacred tradition, and they're both God-given. And so I have a very high view of tradition because that's what the church teaches. So when it comes to the age of the universe, that's the tradition. That's the sacred tradition. And it's been poo-pooed recently by, allegedly, by people in the hierarchy, even St. John Paul II, because we're all subject to concupiscence, worldliness, and we can believe the hype. When Satan tells a good story and all the scientists build a very elaborate story, the Catholic is susceptible to believing the lie. And that includes St. John Paul II. He might have believed the lie of evolution. And there's some people who believe the lie of theistic evolution, and they're I certainly wouldn't condemn them. I mean, St. John Paul II is a saint. He's in heaven. So he no longer believes in evolution. He's up in heaven, you know. He no longer believes in an old earth. That's for sure. You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't condemn old earthers. I think they're wrong, and I think if they look into it, they'll change their mind. But I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I'm not worried about your wife. I'm not worried about anyone. You know, Pope Francis probably believes in an old earth. Just I'll talk to God, and I'll say, hey, God, can you help your shepherd to understand the tradition of creation? And but I'm not going to stick my nose in. I'm not going to start lecturing people or whatever. I'll debate people online, like, just for fun. Talk with Aaron Ra and different people. I've had a couple of Christians on. I've talked about creationism versus theistic evolution, and to me, that's just a fun conversation. It's like, but they're in terms of what's in their heart and what they believe and why, like that, they have to follow the truth, follow their lights as they're provided by the graces of God. Like we all have our lights, we live according to our lights, and they have to follow their conscience, and they can't just say, oh well, Dave believes this, so I'm going to believe it. Like that makes no sense whatsoever. For someone to just say, oh yeah, well, David Ross up in Canada, he believes this, so I think I'll believe it too, that makes no sense whatsoever. That would be the most foolish thing to do, the most foolish thing to do.
Have you ever converted anyone
Not that I'm aware
to
of.
the faith?
Not that
To
I'm
the
aware
faith?
of. Not that I'm aware of.
No.
Yeah. If
Do you think it can be done through reason, through reason?
not
Like,
really, not really, but that's just more for fun, like just chit-chatting about philosophy and
okay,
stuff like that.
okay,
It's just more for fun. That's my hobby. But if there's
okay,
if there's any power in my so-called ministry or whatever, it would be my prayers and the perpetual masses I enroll them in. That's the heavy artillery. This is just fun chatting, right? So there might be people that go away and think about my perspective, what I said, and then they have food for thought, and God can water those seeds, and maybe they'll grow into something.
hmm,
But I've never
yeah,
seen any fruit from that, and I don't want to see it because it's more exciting. There's more merit that will come to me if I'm not aware of it. Like,
okay,
there's more merit, and it's going to be better for me if I don't know. You know,
okay,
so that's a surprise. I'll delay that gratification if there is any. I mean, I'm sure that you and I are instrumental in God's graces, for sure, 100%. But it's kind of hard to do an accounting of it. Like, oh yeah, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and it bore this fruit, that fruit, the other fruit, whatever. I've talked to Catholic podcasters and Christian podcasters who are big, have a lot of followers, and they tell me, I get emails every day. Thank God for you. You brought me back to the faith. You brought me to Christ. Da, 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 like
yeah,
every day.
yeah, yeah,
I've never received one. I maybe had a couple of emails over the years where people said, yeah, you helped me, I'm coming back to the faith, or whatever, like a couple.
okay,
But that's pretty
okay,
minor compared to like these big guys on YouTube. Uh, their inbox is full of hatred and love and everything in between because they just have a lot of listeners, and that's not what my role is. I'm just small, but I'm a little bit jealous that they have all these converts. I have to
Well,
admit, I'm jealous.
I have to ask you before we go. I got to ask you one quick question
Yeah, yeah,
because it's a political question, though.
yeah,
It's about this Christine Anderson,
yeah,
and I looked into her, and what I don't understand, David, is okay. She's from Germany, right?
yeah.
Okay, what's this connection between German politicians and the Canadian
It's got nothing to do
politicians?
with Germany. It's got nothing to do with Germany. There are some members of the European Parliament who are rebellious freedom fighters, and they're like, screw the system. We don't like this globalist nonsense, blah, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. And they'll get behind anything that's populist. So they got
Okay,
the guy in Czechoslovakia, you got the girl from Germany, you got the lady from France, you got this other guy from Bulgaria, whatever. A couple of them that are like kind of like Trump vibes, like Trump, like sort of like
yeah,
populist freedom fighters. Okay, so they're not saints, they're not perfect, but they're kind of like either grifting and making, they see an opportunity with the populist stuff, or they sincerely believe in individual freedoms and Christianity and stuff like that. I don't know, but I don't agree with everything Christine Anderson said. But my wife did go and meet her, and she thinks she's cool. And I disagree, for example, very strongly when Christine Anderson says that Islam is not a religion. That's complete nonsense. It's complete
hmm,
nonsense. Islam is a religion, and there are good and holy Muslims who love God. Now, I just talked to an Irish Catholic just before speaking with you, and he thinks that Muslims and Jews do not worship the same God we worship. Nonsense. It's the same God. They don't
hmm,
understand the fullness of it. They don't understand that God's a Trinity. They don't understand the incarnation, whatever. But neither did I. When I joined the Catholic Church, I did not
hmm,
believe that either. I did not believe in the Trinity or the incarnation. Sorry. But I was open to it, and I got educated. I said, yes, I believe. Now I believe. And I have a lot of reasons to believe, having read the saints and so on since. And having studied metaphysics and philosophy focused on, faith and reason. So it's complete nonsense to say that Islam is not a religion. It is a religion. So I don't think that's a very mature or responsible thing for anyone to say, any public figure to say that Islam is not a religion. But then again, like I just said, my Irish friend just said that he doesn't think that Judaism or Islam worship the same God, but they do. They do. It's called
Yeah.
monotheism. It's called monotheism,
Right.
and you could be very, very wrong about all kinds of things, but still be right about the uncaused first cause, classical theism. Like, man,
Yeah.
there are degrees. It's a spectrum, right? And like, it's like the ark, the ark of Noah. You're in or you're out. Yes, but during the 100 years when he was inviting people onto the ark, they all said no, but they were able to come on if they wanted to. Only 8 people got on the ark, but the idea was like this didn't happen overnight. It took him 100 years, 100 years of preaching to people like, hey, there's a flood coming, and if you're in, you're safe. If you're out, you're screwed. So it's the same thing with Catholicism or with the truth of religion. It's like, it's a process. It's a process, and like we were talking about earlier, no salvation outside of the church. It's like it's a process. The doors aren't shut yet. The doors are not sealed yet. The doors get sealed at your last breath. When you die, you're sealed. But in that last moment, we don't know what God does, what graces he gives. So you die on your deathbed as a devout Muslim that loves God. In that last breath, just as you're dying, and then you get God showing you the light of the Blessed Virgin
Yeah.
Mary and the church and the Pope and everything, and you're just like, yes, God, yes, beautiful, yes, 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 yes. And can I go apologize to my Christian friends? No, you're with me now. Okay. What do I
Yeah.
do? What do I do here now that I'm in purgatory or wherever I am? Well, you can help. They're going to pray to you. You can pray for them. And this is the whole economy, salvation. Like it's stage 2. Now you're dead. You're dead now. This is what you do now that you're Catholic. Okay. So that's really how I see it. And the whole thing with Christine Anderson, and you have to remember, she's a politician. I do like her, I do respect her, and I trust her a little bit, but not, I don't trust any politician really. But I like to people, I'm for freedom, and I like the truckers convoy here, and I
Hmm.
don't like the vaccine mandates and all the social distancing and the masks and all
Hmm.
that sort of stuff. So anyone that's sort of standing up for the regular people, the blue collar workers, and just people that want to make a
Hmm.
living. Like, how many people lost their life savings with their business that was shut down for no good reason, and the
Hmm.
big box stores stayed open. It's just a basic idea of justice for the little guy,
Hmm.
as opposed to the big bullies, mafia, like getting away with murder, literally, like getting away with murder in these gross, disgusting wars for power and money and all. It's just disgusting. So when someone stands up for the little guy, yeah, I'll applaud them, and I'll be happy. I'll be watching very carefully to see how slimy they are. Like Pierre Polyev, like I don't trust the guy. Like I didn't vote for him, but
Hmm. Yeah.
whatever. I mean, he's gonna do what he's gonna do, and God loves him, and Christ died for him. So I don't know
Yeah.
what he
Yeah.
believes. I don't know if he's Christian or what, but
Yeah. No, that's thanks. I respect your opinion. I think you do have a gift with things like metaphysics and you know those types of things. I think you have a gift with, and it's good to hear it because I think it does. I mean, for me, a couple of things you said, even philosophically, have resonated with me, and I thought, hey, yeah, this guy got a gift.
well, thank you very much. But I mean, it's of limited usefulness, like I said earlier. But it's fun for me, and it's a give and take in every friendship, in every relationship, in every discussion with a guest. And there's a lot of discovery involved. And like when I talk with you, the more I talk with you, the more I get a sense of where you put your emphasis. Okay,
Right.
and you
Right.
shared a little bit today about some personal stuff like your daughter and how to be gentle and so on and so forth. Okay, so
Yeah.
you get a sense about reality. Okay,
Yeah.
so I've got all these books behind me and I read a bunch of books and whatever. That's one thing, but it's another thing to
Mm.
talk to a living, breathing human being with a real daughter who may have strayed from the faith temporarily or
Yeah.
whatever or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
that's reality. That's where your humanity comes in more than just like reading a bunch of books and
Right.
philosophy and metaphysics and all that sort of stuff. Although it has its place too, right? And
It
when it
does.
comes to let's say you've got a young female acquaintance or whatever, and she's contemplating having an abortion, well, your
Mhm.
philosophical and metaphysical arguments might actually help you to have the courage to fight for the life of the child that's in that womb. Whereas if you were just a nice guy and whatever, you might, and you're uneducated about, what a human is, you might be tempted to just not say anything. Even if she came to you asking for advice, you might just be polite and nice. So there is a place for knowledge, philosophical knowledge, ontological knowledge. What is a human nature? What is it? You know, and it can have drastic implications if you're ignorant. And we do have a God-given responsibility to know about science, politics, and everything else, right? Everything in its proper place, in its proper proportion, and for the greater glory of God and for the salvation of ourselves and our loved ones and all those around us. So yeah, it's we can broadly speak about the intellectual versus the practical, and you touched on the practical nature of Jews, how they're very good with the family, common sense sort of stuff, and money, and we joked about that. They
Mhm.
also have a great sense of humor and a good ability to communicate. That's like a well-known trait. High IQ with these, for the most part, on average, with the Jewish people and these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And we can all help each other in different ways. And I guess that's the organic side, the beauty of moving around in this world. Because I often think about, if I lived in a society or a city or a world where it was just like devout Catholics, I wonder, like my Irish guest just said to me, like, I want everyone to be Catholic. And I said, well, yeah, that's the process, that's the goal, that's the learning curve we're all on. But for the time being, I appreciate difference. I appreciate that someone is sincerely and authentically on a different track. And yeah, they're wrong about a whole bunch of stuff, but so am I. And let's see where we can help each other, right? So that's how I see it.
I got to tell before I go, I got to share some humor with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found it so incredibly funny when you were talking to that guy who was the bodybuilder.
Oh.
Okay. And you were talking about steak. Okay, remember that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Because I don't eat steak. I don't eat steak.
but you said to him, he said, "Well, what kind of steak do you eat?" And he's eating the top shelf stuff. And you said, "Well, you know what? You know, I never liked steak because I had a heck of a time chewing it." And I was, the Scotsman, hey, and I
Uh,
said, David's eating that low grade steak.
it's true. It's true. I'm Scottish, cheap.
I was busting my gut laughing at that.
Now, what vibe did you get from him? Do you think because he left the call abruptly? I was wondering if it was just something I said. Did I annoy him, or did he just leave because he
No,
had
no,
another appointment? Okay. You thought the
no, no,
chemistry
no,
was
no.
okay? The chemistry was okay?
The chemistry's fine. I know that I don't want to keep you too long. I love talking to you, but I don't want to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
I do
want.
have to get back to the wife here. I got to get back to the wife.
Yeah, you do.
But
You do have a wife.
she's a vegetarian, so that's another reason we don't eat steak. She's a vegetarian.
she's a she's a Greek and she's a vegetarian.
Yeah. She's a Greek
She's
who
missing the boat.
she's a Greek who doesn't eat garlic either. She doesn't eat garlic and she's Greek. Great talking to you, my friend Daniel, and we'll
Yeah.
we'll continue to pray for each other, and we'll talk again very soon. Okay, say hi to your wife. And did I see your cat? Was that your cat she dragged out of there?
Nope. It's my dog. Looks like a cat.
Ah,
It's
cute.
a. I have people say to me, "What is that?" And I said, "I don't know.
What's
I
its
think it's
name?
Bella.
So they say, "What is
Her
that?" You
name is
say,
Bella.
"That's Bella."
It's Bella."
Amazing. Is she tender or chewy? That's the question.
She's
Is she Scottish?
well, you
Or
know what? My brother was married to a Scottish girl, and he told a story about the Scotsman who bought a car and it had a radio in it. And he said, "Take it back. take it out. he,
Seriously?
he didn't want the radio. He thought it would be less money if he got it. He says, take it out.
Oh my God. Ah,
It was funny.
it's amazing. Great
Anyway.
talking to you, my friend. Give my love to the wife and to your creature there, the four-legged creature.
I'm going to send you that.
Remind me what I'm sending you. You're going to send me the name of the person, and I'm going to send you some information about the Scalabrinians in Chicago. You get in touch with them. They're very friendly. They're very friendly, and if you tell them David Ross is the one who sent you, I'm sure you'll get a warm reply. Okay.
Yeah, I really want to send that name to you because that her parents are suffering so much with this addiction. Okay,
amazing.
Thanks, Dave.
Amazing. Love you, my brother. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, you take care. God
bless you. Bye.
Bye.